Mesdames et messieurs, cette session de la conférence est consacrée donc aux grands projets d'infrastructure qui sont au cœur même de la stratégie des BRICS. Et dans ce contexte, je vais vous parler.
This session of the conference will deal with great infrastructures projects which are the heart of the BRICS strategy. And in that context, I will speak about the grand design of Eurasian development proposed in the 17th century by the great German philosopher, scientist and political figure Leibniz, which is still a wonderful model for today. Before coming to that, however, some remarks about the question of great infrastructure projects. They are indeed the very basis for the industrial development of a nation. No progress is possible without modern transportation, energy and water infrastructure. But it would be false to look at these projects in themselves for danger of falling into the mistakes of Keynesian economists for whom what is important is to generate economic activity in whatever area that may be, even if it isn't only opening holes on the ground to fill them back again. What is important in the BRICS strategy is that those infrastructures and the pulleys, cranes and excavators used in their construction are only the concrete expression of human creative genius and of human will to master the enormous challenges of nature for the transformation of human society. Before those objects come into existence, there is the conception of man as a creator, opposite to that of man as a predator, who predominates today as a result of the varieties of extreme liberalism that of the Western financial centers, the City of London and Wall Street, have spread throughout the world. The BRICS strategy is also nourished by the more noble vision of human civilization, by the will to build a world where all the nations, whatever their size and wealth, will have the right to full development. A Westphalian world where all the nations will be sovereign to make alliances with the partners of their choice and not forced to submit to such or such ideological bloc or to become vassals of such and such empire. Mr. Kadyshev reaffirmed that principle this morning. The Chinese president, Mr. Xi Jinping, negotiates every day win-win contracts with small and large nations. The vision of man has This vision of man has unfortunately disappeared in the transatlantic area, where it has been replaced by that of a predator and by the return of empires. The vultures are everywhere in the financial domain, in governments where they loot public wealth, and the weakest among us in war, where they unleash their savageness, and in the Middle East. France had the chance to have Charles de Gaulle, who represented in his time the spirit of the BRICS, but it has now fallen into disgraceful opportunistic alliances, where for a handful of dollars she goes from the decadent American empire to the most backwards oil monarchies, without excluding entirely the BRICS, however, because you never know, they might win in the end. For the real France, let us reflect upon the 13th of January 1964, where Charles de Gaulle, President of France, just turned sovereign again, broke ranks with the Anglo-American bloc, announcing the reopening of diplomatic relations with another sovereign nation, China. Because while he didn't approve of China's regime then, he made the bet, as he said, that in the immense evolution of the world, by multiplying the relations between peoples, one can serve the cause of man, that is, of wisdom, of progress and peace, and thus all the souls, wherever they might be on earth, could meet sooner at the rendezvous given by France 175 years ago, that of liberty, equality, and fraternity. In the aftermath of that decision, France left the integrated command of NATO in 1966 and opened relations with the Soviet Union as well. And it is because I'm fully convinced that France can recover its military sovereignty and break with a Western bloc, which financial crisis and drive for empire is pushing to world war against Russia and China, and that other European countries can also find there the inspiration to do the same, that I will present to you the immense Eurasian project proposed by Leibniz in the 17th century. It is also because this project sets a very high standard and that in order to succeed in what we are doing, all those who are struggling today to bring about this new world that the BRICS are creating must nurture themselves to this beautiful ideal.
Alors, Leibniz.
Leibniz. It was in order to change a Europe devastated by irrational wars and hostage to the demons of religious fanaticism that Leibniz, a contemporary and collaborator of Jean-Baptiste Colbert, fought to create the conditions for peace and development throughout the Eurasian continent. His grand design, an alliance between Europe and China, the most developed areas at that time, and let Russia, which is in between the two, progress through the increase of cultural and economic exchanges between the two. The relations among nations are not the same today, but the principles remain. It is that design that Leibniz presents poetically in the preface of his work, the Novissima Sinica, News from China, by saying that a particular disposition of providence has made things such that the highest culture and ornament of humanity find themselves concentrated at the two extremities of our continent, Europe and China. Perhaps this by the supreme providence, by having the most advanced nations extend their hands to one another, has sought to elevate everything that is found in between for a better rule of life. And Leibniz adds that Tsar Peter the Great is favorable to the project and is supported in the endeavor by the Orthodox Patriarch.
S'ouvrent alors à l'Europe et montrent tous deux un grand zèle pour porter dans leur pays la connaissance des sciences.
Leibniz was extremely lucky that both Tsar Peter the Great and the Chinese Emperor Kangxi were opening to Europe and showed a great zeal to bring to their countries the knowledge of sciences and of European culture, unquote. Having worked for years to build a privileged relation to both these heads of state, Leibniz, in his role of counselor to the princes, attempted to change the course of history. He met 3 times with Peter the Great, in 1711, 1712 and 1716. He became his advisor. The Tsar had asked for him to help him to bring his people out of barbaries. Concerning Kangxi, the relation was not direct, but through a group of Jesuit missionaries who had been working in China since a century, and who, thanks to their scientific knowledge, had succeeded to gain the emperor's trust, and in particular that of Kangxi, who was in power at that time. Leibniz was in epistolary contact with many of those Jesuits and inspired even the mission of 5 Jesuit mathematicians from France who left for China in 1685 to work with Kangxi. All the memories of this impassioned dialogue between Leibniz and Peter the Great and his advisors are fully accessible today thanks to the collected works of Leibniz compiled by Fouchier de Carrey. At the heart of these proposals, quote, attract all active and capable men of all professions, unquote. Instruct his subjects, in particular the young ones, teach them how to create by rediscovering the great discoveries of the past, translate to Russian the descriptions of all the arts and sciences, open up schools everywhere and create science academies in the main cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kiev and Astrakhan, found libraries and observatories everywhere and laboratories to build machines. A century before the British, Leibniz, who collaborated with the efforts of the Academy of Sciences of Paris to develop heat-powered machines, advised the Russians to create a laboratory where the good chemists and pyrotechnicians could study the uses of fire for the work in the mines, metals, foundries, glass factories, and even for artillery. Like a modern-day Prometheus, he said, quote, fire must be regarded as the most powerful key to the bodies, unquote. Concerning infrastructure, he advised them to reflect on what could be done for rivers and for country planning, to think about the Volga, which could be united to the Don by canal, and to improve navigation, especially on the Dnieper and the Irtis, make canals as well to transport goods and to dry up the swamps. a trade of light with China. Leibniz's work in China is also a beautiful example of cooperation among nations, respectful of the best traditions, for which the sorcerers, apprentices of color revolutions in the West could greatly profit. In his Novissima Sinica, he compares the relative merits of Chinese and European cultures, which he sets almost at equality, by saying, the Chinese Empire, he says, does not lose comparison to cultivated Europe when it comes to extension, and even surpasses in the terms of population. Europe, says Leibniz, is victorious when it comes to knowledge of forms that separate mind from matter, such as metaphysics and geometry. The Jesuits worked to solve that by teaching geometry, astronomy, and mechanics. See the steam car invented by the Flemish father Verbist, tutor of the young Shang-Chi, and by assisting in great engineering projects.
Il est certain que nous le fîmes vaincus dans la philosophie pratique.
But it was the level of daily wisdom of the Chinese that totally impressed Leibniz. If we are equal in terms of techniques, we are victorious in terms of contemplative sciences, it is certain that we are beaten in terms of practical philosophy. I'm almost embarrassed to acknowledge it. By that I mean the rules of ethics and of politics appropriate to life and to the usage of mortal beings. One does not even know what to say about the beautiful order superior to the laws of other nations that rule the Chinese in all things for the sake of public tranquility and of relations among men. End of the quote. This culture of wisdom and of harmony between the daily life, political life, and the cosmos was the heritage of the philosophy of Confucius, the 5th century, enriched by other philosophical traditions. Let us reflect upon the fact that already in the 11th century, China had discovered perspective, and that a great art historian, Guaruoxo, wrote in 1074, quote, if the spiritual value of a person is elevated, it follows that the internal resonance is necessarily elevated and that the painting will then be necessarily full of life and movement. One can say that in the most elevated heights of the spiritual, it can compete with the quintessence. Against the majority of the religious orders and vicars of the Pope, who were bent on trying to Christianize the Chinese by force, and who in the end provoked the failure of Leibniz's project, Leibniz supported the ecumenical dialogue of the Jesuits, and following an in-depth study of Confucianism, he concluded that a dialogue, from equal to equal, could be established between the natural theology of Confucius and not with the revealed Christian faith, but with the Christian metaphysics. The mission of the French Jesuit mathematicians. Finally, to remind those who govern us again and again of the best traditions of our foreign policies, let us come back to the mission of the 5 Jesuit mathematicians to China in 1688, who contributed to found, more than 300 years ago, France's special partnership to that country. Those Jesuits were the emissaries of the working group constituted by Jean-Baptiste Colbert at the Academy of Sciences in Paris, around the director of the Observatory of Paris, Jean-Dominique Cassini. Aim of the group? To use astronomy to correct geographical maps and solve the great scientific and practical endeavor of that time, the definition of the longitudes for navigation in deep sea. Those investigations required the sending of scientists to different parts of the globe in order to collect a maximum of data. The mission of the 5 French Jesuits in China was the follow-up to the trips of academicians Jean Picard to Uraniborg in Denmark, Jean Richet to Cayenne, Varin to the Gorée Islands and the Antilles for the same objective. Leibniz and Colbert set up the mission around the issue, which established Leibniz at the highest level. In his correspondence on Russia, Leibniz describes that scientific project in detail, and it sets up as one of his 3 priorities, calling for such experiments to be conducted in Russia, especially close to the North Pole. The leadership of the team was entrusted to Father Fontenay, who was already in collaboration with another prominent academicians, such as the Danish scientist Euler Römer and Christian Huygens, who presided the academy. Then they set out for China in 1685. The Jesuits were carrying in their suitcases the tables of the satellites of Jupiter established by Cassini, and some 30 instruments among the most sophisticated of their time, among them 2 machines from Euler Römer, mechanical planetarium, who thanks to some springs could reproduce for any given hour all the movements of the planets and the stars, an eclipsorium which allowed knowing the year, month, or part of the month where the solar and lunar eclipses would occur. As a conclusion, if Leibniz was desperate about the corruption of Europe in his time, to the point of having proposed that the Chinese delegation comes to Europe to help change things, what would he say about the present situation, where compared to a China who has made tremendous progress and Russia who has recovered its world power status, Europe plays today the role of the sick man? I think, however, that the emergence of a new Silk Road, the BRICS and the Eurasian Union, that this can provoke a surge in France and in Europe, on the verge of the abyss, on the verge of a new world war. France must quickly renew its dream of liberty and use these new developments as leverage to rebuild the Europe of the fatherlands for the greater progress of sciences, arts, and its peoples. Such a change will depend on our actions after this conference.